Jazz, I think it's a universal language and expression to a number of musicians. And the people who are passionate about listening to jazz. It's such a very strong tool, whereby I remember very well in one of back sleeves of my albums of Keith Jarrett, whereby he says, jazz is like a transport that ferries different tribes around the world. You can come from South Africa, you play jazz in your traditional way. You can be from China, but this is just one transport that takes everybody on board. Guys like Courtney Pine, Jill Scott Heron, Peggy Mseleku, etc. I mean, you know, I have more than what I can call people collect, because like it depends again with the kind of mood I'm in. I mean, there will be times whereby in my studio I just like pull everything off Miles Davis and go through Miles Davis compositions. And then there will be time whereby I would sort of like say, no, I want to be home, listen to Abdullah Ibrahim, Peggy Mseleku, etc. During the times of the UDF, etc., art and music played a major role in protest art, because artists were participating in various ways, locally and internationally, to protest about the way the system was in South Africa. And artists would do images that are of the sufferings of the black people in the country. And if you can go back into the posters that were made during the 70s and the 80s, I think they were called Zabalaza, of the artists. I think one of them that I remember very well was of the late Tami Miele. So it was not going to be easy for the regime to ignore all the strength that came from visual artists, musicians, and even theater people. So I would say, in one way or the other, we managed to sort of like chop the roots of apartheid and bring apartheid down through the practice of music, theater, and the visual arts. The thing is, like, jazz for me is like, it is in my vein, because like my two eldest brothers were jazz collectors, especially my eldest brother who's deceased, Ranki. He was a jazz musician himself. There was this thing in the family that the two of us are artistic, and then they would be like criticize each other. If I sort of like do some artwork, he would just quickly tell me, because he's got the depth of that. With me as well, I say, oh, my brother, don't try to sound like Hubert Laws, because he was a flutist. Do it your way. And then it was like we were watching each other. And since then, I mean, I looked at jazz as a source of inspiration to me. I mean, I just become so dry and off if it's that period of load shedding, and then I can't play music in my studio, because it keeps me going. So there's a very strong influence and inspiration that's in me that I get from jazz. And like, when we can balance things as well, there are jazz musicians who are painters. Miles Davis is one of them, Mal Waldron, Johnny Mitchell, to name but a few. I think even our local artist, I think Brastompi, I forgot his last name, he's a trumpeter. Brastompi is a watercolorist. So there's a balance, you know, so I just envy to be a musician, but I can't. I just have the upright bass, and then, yeah, I try. Miles Davis had this free spirit. He didn't sort of like try to appease the art dealers. What he was doing, what Charles Mingus said, you better get it in your soul. So you must feel it here, don't worry about anyone else, don't get commercial. So Miles Davis to me was like a true artist, because like some of his paintings you think they're childish, but this is how he expressed himself. I mean, like, but the one on Beaches Brew, it's quite a very deep piece that has got a message, and I don't know, because like it has got that dark face that is lighter, which I think it's more like an albino and it's intertwined fingers, etc. And again, that album, that's when Miles Davis started to sort of like shift from the standards. He was doing it his way, and then he led by example. He was criticized for moving from playing the standards into that kind of music, jazz rock you can call it. But at the end, they followed him. He led by example. I don't link that much with the digital stuff. The only closest part for me would just like to print an image that I would like to use for my collage. But in my business, I don't think I have that link. I think things have moved away from the era of the protest art. Although I had these questions during the times of protest art, maybe an international journalist asking me about my practice, and the question would be, but Sam, you guys, a dark cloud is hanging over you, but how come you sort of like have people like in the shabbies, they're smiling, you know, people are getting married? And I said, life goes on. Life goes on. It doesn't mean that this dark cloud, it's sort of like, it doesn't give us, we are looking into it. We forget that we're human beings. People should get married. People should go to church. And I said, I do whatever is inspiring me. And then later, post-apartheid, there were questions that now protest art is gone, and what's the way forward? And I said, remember Steve Biko's words when he said, I write what I like, Sam Nhlengethwa paints what he likes.